We are moving along here till noon Eastern on Channel 88. Glad to have you aboard. We've been focusing on Hard Knocks, the Oakland Raiders being selected for the latest installment of the HBO show coming up this summer. We'll get into more on that front as we move forward. 877-NFL-KICK, 877-635-5425 is the telephone number. You can also interact with the two of us on Twitter. I'm at Lance Meadow, one word, last name, M-E-D-O-W. He is at Dave Deal66. We are now joined by a very special guest in studio with us, Bob Broderick, who is the president and co-founder of XTECH Protective Equipment. Bob, appreciate the time. How's everything today?
Fella's doing well. Thanks for having me in.
So you've had a lot of experience in terms of this safety movement, I would say, in the National Football League. Bob, for members of the audience who are not familiar with your company, what exactly does XTECH do and the involvement, the extent it has with players within the National Football League?
Yeah, so fairly simple. We're going into our 7th season for 2019 on the field. We specialize in all protective equipment for football from the neck down. Basically everything a player would need except the helmet. Primarily shoulder pads, ribs, back plates, thigh and knee, girdles, things of that nature. This season's the 7th year on the field. We will be the number one pad worn, selected by players in the pros this year. Quite a few, handful, probably about 250, 300 college programs as well. And we've basically launched about 7 years ago. We saw a trend moving in that direction. The game has obviously changed quite a bit. A lot of technology was put into helmets over the last 8 to 10 years, not so much for everything else. So we launched kind of seeing that this was coming, and a lot of medical attention, and the players are starting to realize we're here.
Teddy Monica, who is the designer of the shoulder pads, was actually the man who made my pads my entire career. Knock on wood, thank God I never had any shoulder injuries. But just talk about that. I know that you've got a great story about the player's mentality about not really knowing. I'll let you talk out about, asking a certain individual about what type of cleats he was wearing and then going from there.
Yeah, I met Teddy, a variety of NFL and college equipment guys, trainers introduced me to him. Teddy Monica is a designer. He's been doing this 30-plus years. He's known in the industry. I'm definitely more of the sales and marketing side. And when he introduced this concept to me, I was kind of blown away at the fact that there really was nothing. There was no evolution of it over time. And the reason I really got involved was, I grew up, in the pro sports landscape, and players know everything about what they do. They know what side cleats they wear, what they eat before a game, how they train. If it's raining, do they switch their studs, etc. And they know everything. I must have interviewed 50 pro athletes. Jason Witten was one of them, future Hall of Famer. Not one guy could tell me what sort of shoulder pads or protective equipment they wear. They couldn't even tell me the color, the brand name. Nothing. I mean, they were just dumbfounded look on their face.
Think about that.
That's remarkable.
You could tell what color, model, shoe, cleat, but you don't know what shoulder pads you're wearing.
And everybody, Damon Harrison, when he was with the Giants, would tell me. A multitude of guys would just constantly tell me, I don't know. I show up August 1st, and ever since I was in 8th grade, the pads are in my locker. I put them on. And my patented line is, well, if they gave you a size 12 cleat and you were size 14, would you say something? Of course I'd say something. It wouldn't fit. I said, then why doesn't that apply to everything else? And this, wave comes over. Khalil Mack is probably the best example I can give in the early years. He's been wearing us for probably 4 years. When Justin Tuck left the Giants, Giants were one of the earlier teams to adopt us along with many others. When he went to Oakland, I asked Justin, I said, hey, get Khalil Mack his rookie year, right, before he is who he is now. And Khalil came in, he's soaking wet, training camp, right? David, you know better than I do. I mean, after a training camp practice, the last thing you want to do is talk to an XTECH salesman, I would imagine. So literally Tuck grabs him, Khalil walks in, and he says, are you Bob? I said, yeah, and I'll be honest, I didn't even know what the guy looked like. So I'm like, are you Khalil? And remember, this is before he's Khalil Mack. And he said, what is this about? I said, we're revolutionizing shoulder pads, keeping you safe, lightweight, range of motion. And he's like, nah, man, I'm good. I don't care. Let me go get some water. And I said, Khalil, give me 90 seconds. I want to show you two things. 45 minutes later, I couldn't get him out of the equipment room. He's dragging guys in going, did you guys see this? So that gives you a quick idea.
And it's all about that XRD padding that you guys have in your shoulder pads.
So Teddy had a fabulous design. We have patents on 4 components that basically keep it lightweight, breathable, mobility, flexibility, right? David used to block the new edge position. I don't know if that really existed back then, but the defensive end, edge rusher, it's all range of motion. And then we partnered with a material science company called Rogers Corp and what they call XRD technology. It's basically a military-grade foam. And it literally freezes upon impact. So it can be about less than 3/8 thick is what we use. and literally you could put it on my shoulder, hit me with a baseball bat. I've had numerous players. I was just at the Rams 2 weeks ago, and I had Aqib Talib in front of 80 players hit me 3 times with a helmet. I laughed at them. They went absolutely berserk. But it's lightweight, it's flexible. To give the listeners an idea, you can see the videos on our site, but if you were to jump into a swimming pool, it doesn't hurt. You were to jump off the George Washington Bridge into water, it's like hitting concrete, right? So the molecules they actually bond together, and then it instantly softens. So we formed a partnership with them, exclusively found in XTECH for all of American football products.
I think the technology side of things, Bob, is probably the most fascinating aspect because, as you laid out beautifully, players did not necessarily prioritize shoulder pads. It was sort of like just something in passing, hey, let me put it on. But the fact that you've now taken it to a degree where there's a science to it and there's a fit to it, how did we get to that step where that was such an important aspect of this?
Honestly, it's Ted Monica, period. Players, like I said, did not know, and the word custom fitting didn't exist. You buy a pad from us, we take into account height, weight, your shoulder measurement, what sort of position do you play? Are you Luke Kuechly linebacker or are you Von Miller linebacker? That's a drastic difference.
In terms of style of play.
Exactly,
yeah.
Right? Are you an edge rusher? Are you a true 3-4-4-3 defensive end? Are you, when we worked with different players, are you a Sheldon Richardson, can play anywhere on the line? Or are you more of the JPP style of player? That all comes into effect. Different guys want different things, obviously. So, I literally just got back from a 2-week road trip. The Jaguars, the Bucks, the Dolphins, the Raiders, the Niners, the Rams, the Chargers. I can go on. And we will spend 5-10 minutes with each player talking to them about it. Injuries are disclosed. Obviously, we don't comment on what's out there. Some are made public, some are not. But there's plenty of receivers or quarterbacks or things that, they may have had an issue with their ribs that was never public. And they'll let us know about it because they want to make sure that there's special protection for them in the future. The key is basically, how do I keep them lightweight? And, David, I'll ask you this. You played in the league for, I forget how many, 14 years? 11. Every single position out there, didn't miss it. But, helmet guys always ask me, or parents always ask me at the high school level, you could create the world's safest helmet. God himself could guarantee you will never, ever, ever get a concussion in this helmet again. The first thing a college or pro athlete is going to do, I swear to you, is going to put it on, he's going to look in a mirror. And he's going to see, how does it look, and is it too heavy? Because if it doesn't pass those two things, he doesn't care how safe it is. If he can't perform to the level that he needs to perform, game over. That's the end of it. So our motto, one of our taglines, is protection meets performance, because we believe we can keep you safer than anything else out there, but we can also allow you to have the flexibility, the mobility to perform.
Going along with that, you just started talking. I want to hear some of these road trip stories. You've been all over the country, meeting with every football team. Just tell us some more other great stories that you've had with players.
If Delta Airlines is listening, we should be spokesmen for them. But, I'm classic. A few of our salesmen that have just joined us kind of like learned the ropes in the last year, and they travel with me for a week or two and kind of learn the ropes. And they're like, well, where are we going next? I'm like, I don't know. But they're like, we're literally walking into an airport. I'm like, yeah, I'm waiting to see what text I get, whether we're going to Cincinnati, Houston, Dallas, or L.A. One of the road trips that really put us on the map, Teddy and I did it in our year 2. We used to travel together. We basically flew to Phoenix. I remember it was Easter Sunday. We flew to Phoenix, and we did the Cardinals, Arizona State, University of Arizona, a couple high schools out there, drove across the Mexican border along it, right? San Diego, the Chargers were still there at the time, and literally to Seattle and then back to the Bay Area in about 9 days, seeing 3 teams a day. And that road trip is kind of what put us over the hump. And we were able to kind of we had done the East Coast already. We got the West Coast, and it really started to converge. But to give you guys a visual of Ted Monica, I know David's seen him. Teddy's now 63, 64 years old. I'm 36 right now. And in the old days, it was very common for hotels to see us walking in at 3 o'clock in the morning and asking for not 2 rooms, but 1. And saying, we only need it for a few hours because we got to be at an NFL team in a couple hours. A real funny story, we learned if you keep shoulder pads in the back seat when you get pulled over by a cop, they're probably going to ask you, what's up with the shoulder pads? It's not football season. And you tell, I'm on my way to see University of X. We actually fit. Oh, that's great. All right, man, be safe. Why don't you just get out of here?
That's better than a gold card in New York.
Yeah, that worked at least 4 or 5 times, so.
Works for the conversation standpoint.
Yeah.
We're talking with Bob Broderick. He's the president, co-founder of XTECH Protective Equipment. the other aspect of this, you talked about how it was a turning point when you started to travel around and sell this to teams. How did you make an indentation, though, for the NFL overall, Bob, to open the doors for you?
Well, thankfully, myself and Teddy had an interesting background. I actually started with the New York Giants when I was 14 years old. I was a part-time equipment guy. I was here when David was here. I moved on to the PR marketing side towards, later in David's career. Teddy had been with other companies, some of the other market leaders back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So he had a reputation with medical staffs, team doctors, equipment guys.
Teddy knows everyone.
He's the guy. I mean, when we started this, we took a road trip from Jersey to Miami, and we literally had like 2 drawings of his and a piece of foam and an idea, and we sold pads. And I'm like, we don't even have a product. And it was like traveling with the Beatles, because we walked in the Navy or South Carolina or any of these teams. It was like Teddy being reunited with the people. And what does he have? Because there's some products still out there that were designed by him 15 years ago that are still being used. So thankfully, with our reputation, our background, we were able to access the top level, the NFL, which is a little different. Most companies would start at the high school level and then work our way up. The NFL, we had probably 8 to 10 teams in the first 2 years really embrace us. The best thing I can say is we would accept feedback from players. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you want more of? Right? I mean, I remember David worked with us at a Super Bowl one year, and everyone was like, well, as an offensive guard or tackle, you'd want big shoulder pads. You're out, you're pulling.
No.
Because no, I'm a tackle. I don't want Von Miller, Khalil Mack having anything to grab in my shoulder.
That's a good point.
So I was wearing tight end pads.
And you want to be able to move, even though you're a big offensive lineman.
Exactly. And, I mean, I just got back, like I said, from seeing 8 or 9 NFL teams. How many who's the big offensive tackle with the Rams? Whitworth?
Yeah.
Right? He looked at me and goes, my game is all in here, right? My hands are extended. I'm not using my shoulder. There's a new NFL rule now where X amount of yards down the field, they can't
drop and lower the head.
Exactly,
yes, yeah.
right? So the blocking styles have changed completely. How many guys now, I mean, David's now, he looks like a different person than what he was playing, right? But how many guys train in the MMA style? It's all hand movement, right? The Bosa brothers. I just saw Joey in San Diego about 2 weeks back. They all train, right? It's all hand and elbow pulls in the MMA style, which is why they're working with guys like, Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture in the offseason, learning leverage and all that, because it's all hand movement, right? The old days of like your Tony Saragusas at D-tackle, they don't really exist like they did back in the day. You still have your Damon Harrisons, but if you ask him, he plays the game with his hands.
Well, Bob, this is a fascinating development that you've brought to the National Football League, and they could go to xtechpads.com, right, if they want more information?
Yeah, highly encouraged. As I said, every NFL team uses us. 7 of the 9 Canadian Football League teams. We have an international presence, about 300 colleges, the big boys, Washington State, Michigan, Ole Miss. Our guy Jack Mara's down at Mississippi and Mississippi State right now. Some top high school programs, Mater Dei out in California, South Lake Carroll, St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida, De La Salle. This is widely available to high school parents as well as the players, xtechpads.com, and I highly encourage them to check out the site as well as our Instagram page, which is at xtechpads. We probably send out 30, 40 pads to individual parents and players constantly. I just got a message last night from a player at Valor Christian in Denver, where Ed McCaffrey coaches.
Yep.
And it's really taking on quite a presence at that level. And we just want to be able to educate players that, we can keep you safe, but you can also perform at the highest level.
The balance of both, which is so critical
Absolutely.
in today's NFL. He's Bob Broderick, president and co-founder of XTECH Protective Equipment. That is a mouthful as I try to get out of it, but the protection aspect is certainly number one. Bob, greatly appreciate you stopping by. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, fellas.